What's up, wrestling fans? Welcome to the Grappler podcast, the podcast where we go behind the scenes with the toughest names in Georgia wrestling, from high school hammers to Division I legends, wrestling coaches of all sorts, and even entrepreneurs shaping the future of the sport. I'm your host, Cody Parker. Let's get into it. I got Tony here. Tony is the owner of Grappler Gold, where Georgia Grappler is run out of. Tony, maybe we kick things off telling everyone how we first crossed path about 6 years ago, I think now.
Yeah. First off, thanks for having me on, and thanks for doing this. I'm excited to see the podcast unfold. Yeah, we first crossed paths. I'm pretty sure it was via Nate Etheridge.
Yep.
He was coaching at Collins Hill, and you were coaching with him, I believe, at the
Yeah,
time.
that was right when I started to get out of coaching because of work and
Yeah.
kind of a way to stay involved with the sport. And
Yeah,
yeah,
so Nate, I was I was, had Michigan Grappler already, but I was a little bit involved in the Georgia wrestling scene. I coached there for a year in Atlanta, and I had a few people that I knew, including Nate, and that were like, "Hey, we got to do this in Georgia." They're like, we need rankings, we need all this stuff that you're doing with Michigan Grappler. Um, so I gave Nate the task of finding me somebody who could help me, and you were the first person that he brought to me, and you haven't left since. Yeah, can't get rid of you. You're like
yeah,
you taken it and you ran with it, and it's been pretty awesome. So
just hanging
yeah,
around.
that was the start.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I remember that too. Gosh, it was like work was just getting overwhelming and trying to coach, and I couldn't make it to practices on time anymore. The 9 to 5. They're like, yeah, this is if you want to move up in the company, this isn't going to work. Splitting time between wrestling and so I even went to coach youth for a year, and that's a whole nother world in itself. And that's when I was like, let me just see what I can do. And it just happened that same time. Yeah, I think it was right around 2018, 2019. Yeah, you had reached out and we got it going and started with rankings, and it took a little bit to get a pace and get things going, but it was once it got rolling and we had like a pace to everything. And we also have one other who we can't really go into who he is, but we have one other guy that helps us out with our rankings. And then we have like Tyree Henry, who helps us out a lot with video and stuff. He's been going to Super 32 and things like that. And then people all around the state are super helpful, whether it goes emails or whatever it may be, reaching out to me, DMs, texts. But yeah, Tony, why don't you tell people they don't know you as well? Why don't you tell them a little bit about your background, where you grew up, how you started in wrestling, kind of how that
Yeah,
shaped your journey. Most of these guys I see have been seeing for 10, 15 years straight, so they're pretty familiar with me.
yeah. No, I mean, I wrestling's been a huge part of my life. I grew up wrestling. Started when I was 6. Wrestled my whole life in Michigan. And I was fortunate enough to go wrestle at Michigan State. I'm pretty old now. I was there from 2002 to 2007. Um, and then, yeah, I actually started while I was at Michigan State. I started Michigan Grappler in 2006. And I always really like, I was like kind of a geek, like a fan of the sport. And so,
Yeah,
really just I don't know, I was interested in at the time that was back when like newspapers were still a thing,
yeah,
and the newspapers didn't cover wrestling, very well. And so I was like, we need like real coverage. And so that was kind of my original goal was just to promote wrestling, just to like make
yeah,
wrestling. So if you're a wrestler that you feel like, hey, I'm out there, like I'm getting covered and it's cool to be a wrestler. So that was kind of the reason I started it. And then it kind of all just snowballed from there. I did it for a couple of years. After college, I got into coaching. I coached in Michigan for a couple of years, and then I coached in Georgia. I was in North Atlanta High School, and I coached there for a year. Got a little bit, I started to meet a few people, kind of, different people in the Georgia scene, and that's when I really realized that, like, wow, like, being a Midwesterner, right? I never really
yeah,
considered Georgia. Georgia is like a wrestling state,
yeah,
it's like there's no college, D1 colleges and whatever.
yeah,
And once I was there, I was like, wow, there's like, not only is there a lot of like good wrestlers, but there's just a lot of, there's a pretty, was a pretty deep rooted community of wrestler.
yeah.
Like, the wrestling community was pretty strong. I was like, I was just really impressed with it. And I ended up going back to Michigan. I got a teaching coaching job back up in Michigan. But I stayed pretty connected with a few different folks in Georgia. And yeah, and then 6, 7 years later, Nate Etheridge came down to Georgia, and I was talking to him before he left about it because he was just asking me like my opinion because he knew that I had been in Georgia, and he's
Yeah.
like, asking me like kind of about it, and I was like, and I shared the same thing I just shared with you. Just I was like, yeah, I think there's a lot. It's actually it's a great I think it's a great community, and yeah, so um yeah, then the conversation led to we need a Michigan grappler in Georgia. So then we were like, well, let's do Georgia grappler, and that's here we are now. But yeah, wrestling's been awesome. I love the sport. Um and I gotten out of coaching, and I have some different, business stuff that I do now. That's not related to wrestling, but I always say that wrestling, I don't know, like whatever I do during the day might pay the bills, but wrestling doing stuff with wrestling is what's fun, and that's what gets me
Yeah.
fired up. So I keep somehow luring myself into more wrestling stuff, tournaments, events, whatever it is. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. That actually kind of leads into my next question. But I remember when Nate was first like kind of scouting Georgia wrestling, he was calling me a bunch because he was taking the Collinsville job. I wrestled at Collinsville, had been at Collinsville for years, coaching. Um, and that was one of his big things, was kind of the community. If people were actually dedicated to the sport down here, and then you come to find out some of the people are actually full on psychos about wrestling.
We all are, yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, that was pretty funny. So with my next question, kind of on your success as an entrepreneur, you do things also outside of wrestling, which I think is really cool. I wish more of the wrestling community kind of had that mindset too. I think sometimes we get too drawn into being wrestlers and like what wrestling is and what it's about. Like it's okay to grow beyond that and expand from what that is. And I think you see a lot of successful people after wrestling, that's their mindset, is that they don't get too stuck into what they need to be, what they have to be. They kind of grow and use their strengths even from wrestling to help grow. So what kind of sparked the idea for you to go from a competitor to creator? Walk us through your early steps as an entrepreneurial path. What made you want to build a brand, a company around wrestling, and maybe some tough lessons early on, and then stuff you learned from.
Yeah, I mean, for me, like when I first started, I never really thought of myself as a entrepreneur, I guess. I was always kind of more like I was just really wanted to coach wrestling. That's really what I
Yeah,
like to do. I went into teaching because I wanted to coach wrestling. And when I first started the website, again, it was kind of just more like I liked it, and so in the beginning of it, it was always kind of a challenge for me because I would always find myself torn, like, am I a coach or am I like a media guy? Like
yeah.
what am I here? Because, I'd go to Fargo and I'd coach, and then I'd run up to the media table and write the article to recap Michigan, when the session got over. And it was always this thing I was kind of torn between. And coach, I stuck with coach. I kind of leaned more coaching for a long time, and then I think what really, I started having kids, and I was like, I don't know if I'm gonna coach much longer, and I don't know. So then I started to lean more into the website and like kind of taking it more seriously. I just kind of, it was just there, and I've always did it, but then. Like kind of like around the time we started Georgia Grappler, I was like, I need to really like treat this like a business, and just
Yeah.
try to like grow it and just be better, and and yeah, and it's the thing with wrestling though is it's like for me, I never want to view wrestling as I don't know. I think too much of sports gets like sports in general, youth sports gets too privatized and too
Yeah.
geared around
Yep.
money all the time. And so, I wanted to treat it like a business and do it well, but I
Yeah.
also like it's not my primary source of income,
Yeah.
and I never
Yeah.
wanted it to be that way. I never wanted to be
Yeah.
like I'm like relying on wrestling,
Yeah.
or whatever, taking parents' money for subscriptions or whatever it is to
Yes.
feed
Yeah.
my family. But I also think that for the sport of wrestling, like we used to get a lot of kickback on when we first started taking subscriptions. There was a lot of kickback in
Yep.
all states, right? Not
Yep.
just Georgia, not just Michigan, everywhere.
No, I remember it.
And the conversation that always kind of I would try to have with people is like, look, if something is always free, like you can only limit, like you're always gonna be limited on how great of coverage you can provide when you're
Yeah.
not like for us to do it well, we have to be able to pay people to provide content and to really like to create a structure around it. And so treating it like a business and being okay, how can we make it profitable? How can we hire good people? How can we, like build the brand, grow the brand, and branch off, do things besides just media, and do tournaments, and do
Yeah.
gear, and do, whatever it is. And I think that when you do it that way, if it's done with the right intentions, that it just makes the product better, which is what we
Yeah.
all want. I mean, we want our sport to be given the same treatment that other sports are given.
Definitely.
But yeah, no, it's been an interesting journey, and I think wrestlers naturally make great. They have they correlate into business well
Yep.
because like my roofing company
Yep.
that I own in Michigan, like we up until a year ago, we only hired wrestlers. We wouldn't hire anyone who wasn't a wrestler, and we
Yeah.
just started hiring non-wrestlers. And to be honest, and I hope that none of my non-wrestling employees see this ever, but the people who aren't wrestlers, they're just not the same. I mean,
No.
they're just different. And
Yeah.
so we are different as wrestlers. Like we just have a different mentality. We figure stuff out. Like we're
Yeah.
naturally competitive and motivated, and we want, and we aren't like we don't want to just settle for like just being okay. We're like, well, let's be
Yeah.
great. So anyways, I think it's just natural for wrestlers, and for me, like especially once I stopped coaching, I
Yep.
had to take I was kind of like very OCD psycho about coaching. Like it ruled my life, and I was like, well,
Yeah.
I gotta take all that energy and put it somewhere else. And
Yep.
so I found ways to do it in the
Yeah, that's
business.
something I found when I do interviews. I mean, I've been with the same company now for it'll be 9 years, and with corporate Marriott in September, but I've worked at Marriott franchises before that, so like 15 years since I was 19, basically. And one of the interviews or one of the questions I always get in interviews is about my wrestling background and stuff like that. I can't imagine too many other sports they're asking about. Oh, you're a great baseball player. How does that translate to
Yeah.
your work ethic and things like that? But they definitely always ask about wrestling and kind of my work ethic and stuff like that. You're getting ahead of me on some of these questions. You're going straight into what I was going to talk about next. Is kind of talk about Grappler Gold, how it's expanding from like gear to content to tournaments, from just being like a simple news source. How did you scale it up? How has social media played a role? Maybe the impact of platforms like Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, YouTube, building the brand, reaching out to the wrestling community and outside of the wrestling community, more importantly, getting to, I know like our Instagram now is at 10.7 thousand followers, I think now. Started at zero, Twitter's up there, TikTok, Facebook, I think we're at 11,000. So getting up there in those numbers, and I think
Yeah, I
it's
mean the
just
social
helpful.
media stuff is you're probably the biggest asset that we've had with social media. You do a lot better at it than I do for sure. Um, no, I mean I think social media is really cool. Just because I think it makes kids like it gets the kids out there, I
Yeah,
mean, and from a business standpoint, it's like that's how you people don't just go to your website anymore. They wait to see the post and they go to the website when they see that the article
yeah,
got posted online. So the social media platform's been really important. But yeah, I mean, I'm just with doing different stuff with tournaments and gear. It's really just trying to, find different ways to lean into the channels that I already have, and
yeah,
just find different ways to utilize that and be more efficient. And there was a while where we were starting to do gear for like NIL athletes and things like
yeah,
that. Really cool, but it became very costly and also like
yeah,
very like a headache to do
yeah,
it through other companies. And so I don't know. I'm like, you know what? Let's just do it myself. And I don't know. It's kind of the way I operate. It's like, let's just figure it out. And then, yeah, I don't know, figure it out. I'm still not really great at it. We're figuring it out
yeah.
though. But, and yeah, tournaments, the same thing. I mean, I was really fortunate to, my college coaches, Roger Chandler and Dave Dean,
Okay,
um, were both, they started New Way. And
okay,
so, they were kind of already in the tournament world, and they were awesome. They were a huge part of my like kind of learning how to do it and starting the Grappler Fall Classic, which was my first tournament, and then it's
yep,
kind of evolved from there. But yeah, I've been pretty blessed to have some awesome, mentors and people to kind of who took me under their wing and kind of showed me the ropes. So
that's awesome. Yeah, Grappler Fall Classic. I mean, you got NCAA champs, All Americans coming through that tournament. It's pretty crazy the alumni that have hit that tournament and won it.
yeah, I just geek out every year for it. My favorite
Yeah,
part is I like to announce the finals and the
yeah,
semifinals. Like I like to do like the play by play and stuff. And
yeah.
so I've done it since the first year, and every year I like hire an announcer, and then the finals come around, and I'm like, all right, I don't need you now. And then I
All
take
right, we're
over.
good.
So
I got this.
I'm like, it's just I like to do it. So yeah, it's
So on that, you've had quite a few Georgia Grappler Fall Classic champs since Georgia Grappler got started. Um, Seems like Georgia's gotten interested in that tournament. Also, just the level of Georgia. I mean, I'm not, didn't start 6 years. Georgia's been growing constantly at a steady pace for the past 20, 30 years, I would say. Probably more 20 years. A lot of influx of great coaches, clubs that are popping up, people more committed to the sport, college wrestlers coming back and giving back. First year, we've had three Division I All-Americans from Georgia, which was really cool. We've had top 10 finishes at Super 32 past few years. More guys finishing, in wrestling in college instead of just kind of calling it a day. Where do you see Georgia wrestling going from here, and what do you think? I mean, I don't know if you knew much about Georgia before. I know you coached there for a little, but the growth kind of in Georgia and how it's progressing.
yeah. I mean, I don't have like the data or statistics for Georgia's
Yeah,
college, like college wrestlers, but just from like what I remember, I don't feel like there was ever a whole lot of Georgia kids, at the NCAA level,
yeah,
competing and All-Americans and things like that. And it seems like now there's a handful. I mean, Georgia's like one of the states that's in the mix with a pretty good number of kids at NCAAs every
yep,
year. And I think, I mean, my guess is that that trajectory is going to continue to go up. And I think, and again, I'm not like by any means on the like, I'm not on the ground level with what's going
yeah,
on in Georgia, right? I'm definitely like looking down from above and watching it all unfold.
sure,
But um it seems like Georgia, what is happening really well is all of the clubs. There's a lot of
yeah,
really well established clubs. And so the phenomenal thing for me is that Georgia overcomes having one of the most divisions or classifications of like
yeah.
any state that I've seen. And
It's rough.
but I think that, what helps the state is that I think if you look across the country, I think that a lot of the best high school wrestlers are starting to um, there's a lot more emphasis on their club and their
Yeah,
off-season programs than really the in-season. So I think that as that trend has happened, it made Georgia having 7 or 8 classifications less of a thing. Like I
yeah,
mean, it's still a
yeah,
thing. It's not ideal, I don't think, but
yeah,
I think that in terms of the high level kids getting better and going, I mean, you see like all the Georgia kids last weekend that go to Vegas, like the
yeah,
round kids, and then you got the level up kids and the
yep,
compound kids, yeah, all the clubs and they're all going to all these different, they go to Fargo and GFC and Super 32 and Vegas
yeah,
and I think that that training year round is has become obviously a lot more valuable and
yeah,
important in the high school season. So,
yeah,
and then that's happening everywhere. You know what I mean? So I think that yeah, the trajectory is going to keep continuing up would be
yeah.
my guess because there's so many good young kids coming up in
I
Georgia.
agree. Yeah, and like, I just want all these clubs to get a. Sometimes I think they let themselves get in the way of the growth sometimes by a lot of infighting and things like that. And I wish there was more of a togetherness, especially with like our Team Georgia crews. Not no one in there specifically or anything like that, but I think sometimes we could have a more functional environment with a lot of these and have coaches and everybody on the same page to help either put the best team out for us. And I think we're getting there. I know it's improved a lot over the years. So hopefully we can get a little more of that and get these guys, everyone on the same page. Let's get the best team out there that we can and compete at the highest level.
Yeah.
Um, just one last question for you, Tony. Growth of the company in the future. What's next for your brand? Are you looking at new products, partnerships? I know you've talked about branching into like clothing and gear more. What's your kind of
Yeah.
vision of the future, and is it going to plan? Do you have plans to keep evolving what we're doing so far?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. No, I mean, I'm always kind of looking for more stuff. The challenge for me, I guess, is it's like balancing my day job, and like
Yeah,
I have and so
same
sometimes
here. Yeah,
sometimes it's kind of tough like how to balance all that. But no, I mean I really think that, I like I really like getting more into apparel and into gear.
yeah,
It's just one of those things that I'm kind of inching my way into it because it's I have to hire people to kind of help me with it. I can't really do
yeah,
it all myself. But I do think that it's something that makes sense. That we're kind of already in the wrestling community, so it kind of makes sense. Another thing too is getting into I would like to evolve into maybe some more events
Okay.
over the next few years, but it's just, for me it's like one of those things like I don't because people all the time are like, "Oh, you should do this tournament or you should do that tournament," or
Yeah.
because I really do think that we do a good job at the events at running events, and the reason why is because it's like I really for me, again, being like a geek, like
Yeah.
the quality of the event really matters to me. And like
Yes.
so
Yeah.
I really try to put a lot of thought into like the experience and like getting like high level wrestling and like
Yeah.
making it really good. And so for me, I've been really hesitant to adding more events because I just don't want it to be like,
Oh, these
an
guys throw this together. Yeah.
yeah, well, and it's
Yeah.
like, a lot of times you can sometimes get like, where it's like you just rinse and repeat and you do the same thing
Yes.
next week in a new venue. And I don't know, I want each event to kind of be
Yeah.
special in
It
its own way.
makes it an event. What makes it
Right.
unique to
Yeah.
itself. Yeah.
And honestly for me too, because like
Yeah.
I like to go watch, like I
Yeah.
just like
Yeah.
I don't get fired up to just watch like a
Yeah.
weekend tournament, so anyways, yeah, I do want to find some places to maybe to do more there because I think that we do a good job. We provide a good product, and I think that
Yeah.
people like it, like to do it
Yeah.
more. And then the other thing that we're starting to get into is in Michigan is I just bought a facility. We're gonna have a wrestling club in
Oh,
Michigan.
that's so cool.
Yeah, which is really just selfish, honestly. Like it's
Yeah.
something I want to do, like I
Yeah.
don't know, I might lose money for all I know,
Yeah.
but I don't even know if I have time to do it, but
Yeah.
we literally just closed on a building and we're doing a bunch of renovations
Oh, that's
and
awesome.
we have like a club. It's also selfish too because I have two kids coming up.
Yeah.
My son is 7. He's kind of wrestled a little bit for the last couple of years, and my assumption is that he's gonna probably start to get more serious over the next few years. So
Yeah.
I was like, oh, it'd be pretty cool just like have our own spot,
Well,
to
I guess
go.
I got to start taking it more serious these next few years too.
Yeah.
That's what you're saying to yourself.
So, anyways, yeah, we're pretty excited about that. That's kind of like, I mean, the website will help promote it a little bit, but it's
Yeah.
kind of like a total sidetrack thing. But anyways, yeah. So who knows though, man? Stuff comes up. I mean,
Yeah.
you talk to me a lot. Sometimes I just get the most random stuff that pops
Yeah.
up. So we'll see.
Maybe we'll get you back down for the Georgia Grappler Invitational this year. We'll see.
Maybe,
We'll see.
maybe. Yeah, it's tough.
Yeah, it's going to be tough this
You
year.
guys start too early. The problem
I
is the season
know.
starts so dang early, and I'm still wrapping up my roofing season.
Yeah.
When you get into December, roofing's done. So I'm like,
Yeah.
but yeah,
Yeah, that tournament's been great. And then the duels are really good. I mean, last year the duels were crazy. We had some really good teams there.
yeah. No, it's been
Um,
awesome to see those events
but
evolve.
yeah, I talked to I guess a little insider info. People will get this now. I've been talking to Coach Omi over at Life University about after state possibly this year, maybe getting a who's number one going tournament.
Oh, that'd be
Taking a champ from each bracket, seeding it out,
yeah,
and see how that goes. I don't know how many people, I know it's been tried to do, or people have tried to do it in the past and it never really
yeah.
worked out.
Michigan too.
They
We
can't make
tried.
weight.
Yeah.
They won't do this. I was
Yep.
like, what if we just did it with like a freaking 15-pound allowance? Like just say, hey, show up, weigh in, you want it. If you're bigger, you're great. If you're still the same weight, whatever, that's come and wrestle if you want
Yeah.
to. But so talking to him over at
That
Life
would be
U,
sweet.
possibly doing that.
Yeah, that would be really cool. Another thing too that's kind of cool that just happened is so I have the Grappler Gold Invitational, which is a
Yeah,
lot like the Georgia Grappler Invitational, but in Michigan.
yeah.
And Coach Roundtree, what's the name of the school? It's not Atlanta Christian. It's Athens.
Uh,
Is it Athens?
Athens Christian Academy, yeah, I think is what it is.
So
Yeah.
they're coming up to
Oh, cool.
Michigan tournament. So
Oh, okay.
we literally have like all of the best teams, like the top 4 or 5
Yeah.
teams in Michigan. It's an individual format, and then we also have Perrysburg, Ohio, is coming this year as
Ooh,
well, which is
they've always been good.
Gray Burnett, and yeah, they're
Yeah,
amazing. So it's going to be a good tournament. So we're
that's
excited.
awesome.
Yeah,
All right, Tony. Well, as we wrap up, I just want to thank you for jumping on the Grappler podcast today. Guys, we've got some big episodes coming soon. More wrestlers, more stories, and more insight into what makes the sport so special. If you enjoyed today's show, be sure to like, subscribe, share it with your teammates, share it with people you know. And until next time, signing off.